Frantz Fanon was a psychiatrist and political thinker. Fanon was born in Martinique in 1925. Fanon is one of the greatest anti-colonial authors in history. He enlisted in the military and then became involved in the struggle for Algerian independence, which started in 1954. He focused on the psychiatric and philosophical analysis of the effects and processes of colonialism on the lives of individuals. He wrote several books, including The Wretched of the Earth and Black Skin, White Masks. In The Wretched of the Earth, Fanon analyzes violence as a concept and practice of liberation in the face of colonial exploitation and domination. Decolonialization is a violent phenomenon. It is not gentle. It is a transformation that will turn the colonized from a spectator of their own domination into an actor in their own story. The colonized world was a strictly binary structure, or had a strictly binary structure. It was an atmosphere of violence, or it had an atmosphere of violence. The colonial structure is like the capitalist structure. Exploitation and domination exist in a subtle and insidious way. People accept that exploitation in both structures. So there is the humanization of the colonizer, at least within the colonial structure, and the animalization of the colonized. This is similar to capitalism in the sense of the bourgeoisie proletariat structure, where the bourgeoisie is often humanized more than the proletariat or working class is often more degraded. So within the colonial system, the colonizer has good values. They have the best values, and the colonized have bad values. That's why the colonizer feels that they need to improve the lives and lifestyle of the colonized, even if the lives of those who were colonized were better than before they became the colonized. Before the colonization happened, many people were much more better off. However, the colonizer has convinced themselves that their values are better and that the original values of the colonized are bad. And in so doing, they justify the colonialization, the repression, and animalization of the colonized. So to decolonize is to reject the dichotomy of the colonizer-colonized relationship. To decolonize means to destroy and unify the structure of colonialization. So today we're going to talk about Black Skin and White Masks. So in the book Black Skin and White Masks, Fanon analyzes the constitution of racism in colonialization. So, at least from what we can glean from chapter 1, according to Fanon, a black person behaves differently than a white person than they would with other black people. Often we think of something like this as code switching, where one will talk differently to someone who is not a part of their racial ethnic group than they would to someone who is in their racial ethnic group. Think of type of slang an individual might use when talking to other black people that they would not use when talking to someone who is white. So to speak is to use a syntax, and in using that syntax, you assume or take on the mantle of a particular culture. And when you take on this mantle of this particular culture, whenever you speak, you are carrying the weight of that culture and that civilization. So when you participate in certain types of what Wittgenstein would call language games, or certain types of linguistic systems, you are essentially participating in that culture. And in doing so, you are carrying the weight of that particular civilization. So for Fanon, a black person will be more white. And in becoming more white, you're more real. You're more of a real man. In the colonial system, the colonized often seek to become more white and more like real people when they use the French language, or when they use the French language. So a black man who has or a black person who has the language is possessed by the language in a way. So because language has extraordinary power. We see this when we see people who talk about African American dialectical English, when they talk down about it, and they say that you should, speak, I guess, the more whatever is the more truer English, whatever is a better, more proper English. When they do that, what they're essentially saying is you will receive more respect by utilizing the English that is more so commonly used among those who essentially are white and in power, and those are the same people who determined what makes a person within society. So in order for you to be more of a person, you must use the language of those who made the rules. So yeah. So the all colonized people unfortunately have an inferiority complex, according to Fanon. They are trapped in, at least the colonized, they're trapped in the cultural values of France, at least the colonized within West Africa, because France Fanon was working from a West African, and even, I want to say to a degree, like an island, because he also talked about, I want to say he mentioned, I believe he may have mentioned Caribbean islands. I have to go back and reread, but he was definitely talking about West African, like the mindset of people who were colonized under the French. These individuals, and this, some of this analysis can also apply to other individuals who are colonized, regardless of their ethnicity. But I mean, whether they're black or indigenous or whatever. But all of these people, according to Fanon, would have this inferiority complex, often because we are trapped in the system, this linguistic system that's created by people who colonized us. So, according to Fanon, at least within those colonial systems, the bourgeoisie, those who are in power, will often use Creole when speaking with servants, which is an interesting dynamic. And it's interesting. It's almost like they have more freedom to use the language however they please, whereas the servants have less freedom in order to speak their language. They must conform, and also, but they don't have necessarily lost their language. Where the bourgeoisie can kind of just do whatever they want with the language. So, if the French, at least if the colonized or the bourgeoisie catch someone speaking in a certain way, they'll probably correct them. But often, your own people, the colonized, will often correct each other too, because everyone is forced to try to reach that ideal of speaking French or speaking properly. Essentially, just think of it as speaking properly. So in France, according to Fanon, they say to speak like a book. So to speak the proper French, the proper way the language is, quote unquote, supposed to be spoken. In Martinique, they will say speak like a white person. So in France, their term for speaking proper is to speak like a book, to actually speak like the text, without referencing a particular ethnicity. But for the colonized, they say speak like the colonizer. When they want to encourage or maybe even to a degree push people into speaking, I guess, properly, encourage or shame or whatever. So, according to Fanon, a black person who goes to France changes because he sees France as representing the ultimate ideal. So, also according to Fanon, the black person must adopt and adjust and conform to the language of the collective. So, according to Fanon, when a black person goes to France and they see the French existing, I guess, doing whatever it is, naturally doing whatever they do. But it's just they're in France and it's white people doing it as opposed to black people in Africa doing it. Essentially, the black person now will have to adopt and adjust and conform to the language of the collective. He adopts the clothes, phrases, words and such of Europe. He evolves. He becomes more white. Well, he pretends that he is almost white. He doesn't actually become that, but he at least not become in a sense of an actual physical transformation, but more so he pretends. And in pretending, becoming to a degree. So, but never fully. only behaviorally. And that's even to a degree. Almost. He's almost white. Or they're almost white. The black person who wants to speak better French, the black person wants to speak better French because it will make them more white. So, according to Fanon, black people, well, actually, according to Fanon, any particular racial theory Fanon was right, but this was everyone who was now even a little bit knowledgeable around that time was arguing that theories of black people's inferiority to white people are obviously false. And according to Fanon, how to get, I guess, out of this mindset of this inferiority, he said black people should focus on freeing themselves more and less on improving their equality to white people. The problem with trying to improving or proving their equality to white people is that you will never prove your equality or your quality or whatever to white people. The best that you can do is free yourself from their domination. So other issues that arise from like this from this relationship where blacks are inferior to whites is that white people often speak to black people as if black people are children. And often they'll even speak to black people without even thinking. And the message of that is, and that's the message of colonialization. And that message is that you stay where you are. Speaking down to someone, patronizing someone, lets them know their place, and it reminds them of their place constantly. So anyways, ultimately, language was used, and these are clear examples of language was used as a tool to oppress black people, at least colonized people. Firstly, they have to conform to the language in order to be considered as people. Next, colonizers will use language to make sure that black people know their place within the colonized system, or know the colonized know their place in the colonized system, among other things. So that's all I'm gonna end that on this.